questions that are being asked, I'd like to mostly address, so this is my preference, is questions that affect how you walk. Questions about living this out. What he's always told me is, tell them that if they're doing what they're supposed to be doing, they'll be where they're supposed to be. But you need a teacher to teach you what it is you need to be doing. All right, Deirdre can start us off here with today. You're the first one for Zone 1.
So Ricky struggles with autism, and for those of you who don't know, there are times when autistic people like to info dump. It's just part of their condition. And with him...
I think I know a lot more autistic people than I thought I did.
Probably.
Got a bunch of people who do a lot of info dumping. I'm teasing.
They'll get hung up on something and then they'll just want to talk about it, and just because it causes them physical discomfort if they don't talk about it.
Right.
So I am wondering, and he is wondering, because he doesn't want to interrupt the flow of Shabbat, for me. But I have this struggle too. Maybe I'll have to get something off my chest. And we are wondering how you kindly deal with someone who has autism and their info dumping on Shabbat, because I know that with him, and communication is difficult for him because of the autism anyway. So how do I be a good wife and let him info dump and do what he needs to do, but also keep Shabbat and try to stay focused on Shabbat?
All right, so we're dealing with I was going to call it medical, like a psycho-emotional problem, right? That he has limited control over. Mm-hmm. All right. Now, clearly, he can't just info dump because you're not there. You're here for a big part of the day.
Yep.
So that part, of course, if he wants to do that on a Friday night when you're not here at times, or during the rest of the day, in the morning before you get here, whatever, if you can push him to say, hey, I'll talk to you when I get home and that kind of thing, that's great. If it just doesn't seem like he can do that because he's really that challenged at the moment, then yes, you're being loving to let him do that, okay? That's not breaking Shabbat. You have someone with a condition that's causing them a literal discomfort problem where they have to process these things, okay? So make the effort to push it out, okay? But gauge the level of his ability to do that. Because you're gonna leave anyway and be here for most of the day, so he has to deal with it somehow anyway. Mm-hmm. So I would think he could wait till you get home.
Well, and he did catch himself, this morning he's like, oh, I'm info dumping on you, and I know it's Shabbat, and I don't want to talk about this because it is Shabbat. And so the thought occurred to me, well, what part of it is medical and what part of it is something that he could hold off on? So to his credit, he was aware enough to have that thought. So, and it brought to my attention, I should probably talk to Rabbi about this.
Yes, and so Ricky has been supportive since the beginning with you here.
Yes.
He's come here for a while. Mm-hmm. He's met with me many times, okay? So he understands what you're doing, all right? So I don't think it's a problem, especially because you just said that he recognized that he might be doing something that would be interrupting your Shabbat, that you actually have a conversation like that with him saying, is this something that can wait? Do you have the ability to put this off, and can we talk about it when I get home or whatever it is, all right, after Shabbat? Or is this something that you really need to deal with? And it sounds to me like he's concerned with respecting that whole issue. We're not talking about some of you that have spouses that really don't care about Shabbat. So if they want to do what they want to do, they just want to do it. He's concerned. He doesn't want to mess up her Shabbat. He knows it's Shabbat. Okay, he used to keep it with us here for a while. So he gets that. So in your case, you can say to him, I know you want to honor my keeping of Shabbat. So if there's any way you can wait, let's try to do that. If you really can't, I'm okay. Rabbi told me I can let you do that without guilt. Okay, I don't want him to feel bad that he's doing it. I don't want you to feel bad. All right?
There was never a guilt thing. I just didn't want to break any line.
No, I understand, but I'm just saying, because people who are listening, sometimes if you're struggling with something, it's because you're going to then feel guilty about it and feel bad about it. I don't want you to do that. Okay, once I've told you that it's okay, then do that without any other thought about it. But again, you're doing your best to protect Shabbat, and he's actually wanting you to protect Shabbat. All right? But that being said, though, he may not be capable of waiting that long, depending on how disturbed his system is in that autistic moment, right? I've seen people in autistic moments where they just can't control that at that point, okay? So if you can have the conversation, say, Ricky, it's okay if you really need to do this now, but if we can wait, that would be better, right? But if it really has to be now, Rabbi said that we could do that. And then let him make that decision. Because I think he would not take advantage of it. He wants to help you feel comfortable that you're keeping Shabbat. So I don't think it'd be a problem.
No.
Okay?
Okay. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. All right, Michelle.
Last week, I found out that I have kahunas. And apparently, I didn't go to the doctor or anything. It was from a policewoman. She told me, I'm standing on her balcony, and she said to me, ex-policewoman, New York. And I was kind of impressed by that. And I'm staying at her Airbnb. And so she runs the Airbnb. And she said, Michelle, here you are from Tasmania. You're standing on my balcony in a m.t.o.i. Is that how you say it?
Yep.
A m.t.o.i. She says, you have kahunas. And I'm like, wow, I have kahunas. Okay, I have kahunas. This is a very Freudian conversation. Anyhow, so she's like really impressed. And I was like, I didn't really see it as impressive. And then a couple of days later, she drives me to Walmart, my new favorite place. And just kidding. And I'm in the car with her. And she says, because I shared with you a couple of bits that I had was bad news. And I was just like, it's okay, it's all right. And I was consoling her. She was upset for me with all the bad news I was getting. And
right.
A lot of things happened. My card got hacked. So, you know the rest.
Right.
Anyhow. And we're sitting outside the Social Security office. And I was in there for ages. And she's like, said, so I just want to know, like, how do you keep dodging all these bullets? And I, ex-cop asking me that, I was like, and she goes, you're doing it so gracefully. And I was like, oh, graceful and kahunas kind of don't go together in my head.
What, have you not seen me do both of those on a regular basis?
Graceful kahunas? I don't know, yeah. Sorry, everyone. Anyhow, this is what happened, so I have to say it. And so...
Those are Freudian terms.
It is definitely...
I can't imagine Freud ever using those terms. But okay, they're Freudian terms.
Well,
right.
In my head, I was like,
right,
they don't go together. They don't go together. Anyhow, she's like, and you're handling it so gracefully. And I was like, oh, and the first thing that came out of my mouth was, will I just give the Heavenly Father all the praise and He helps me? And that's all I said. And my question is, I don't like talking about my faith. I don't generally get into a conversation with it. But she wanted to know, and that's kind of all I said. She asked me where I fellowship, and I said the address and the place, and it's a Messianic. And I said the only way I can describe it, the easiest and the quickest, is a blend between the Old Testament and the New. I wanted to ask you, is that okay? Did I say the right thing?
It's more or less what I say.
Is that okay?
I mean, I more or less say, I say it even more bluntly than that. I go, look, imagine taking Christianity and Judaism and kind of merging them together.
Okay.
Because they think of Christianity, what do they think? They think Messiah, okay? And when they think Judaism, they think laws. And so we kind of believe in Messiah and we keep the laws. So I make it easy for them. I said, so picture a Jew who also believes in Messiah. I mean, I try to use language they would understand. Okay?
Yeah.
Now, as far as sharing your faith, look, all of you should be very comfortable to give an answer for why you do what you do, if someone asks. That doesn't mean you need to evangelize or be evangelical or go out there and proselytize people and whatever. That's Christianity, that's not us. Okay, that's not scriptural, that's not what it says. That's not what Matthew 28 is talking about with the so-called Great Commission. All right, we are not all individually responsible to do that. But when somebody, and this is the kind of thing I've talked about many times, and now you're hearing someone giving a testimony of exactly that. I've told you that we should be those that people look at us when all things are flying off the handle and they go, how come you're not flipping out? How come you have peace? And you go, well, because of my belief system, all right? And that's exactly the situation that Michelle found herself in. And she was able to say, well, because I give praise and gratitude to the Creator, and that brings the shalom, the peace that I need and what's going on. And that's how I dodge the bullets, okay? And so, and it's not that you're dodging them. He's kind of deflecting them a little bit here and pushing them a little bit there as things are going on, because you're giving him all glory and honor and trusting him. And so it's in his hands. But we all should be comfortable to answer questions. Well, why do you do this? And by the way, notice that she didn't just give this long, long answer about all the details, but what should be said, and by the way, I have a teacher. If you have a lot of questions, I have a teacher who'd be happy to answer your questions, right? You don't have to answer all their questions. You're giving an answer for why you have a belief. Well, because I have this belief. And can you tell me about some of the things? You can tell them some basic things or whatever you want to tell them. But when it gets into any of their asking deeper questions, I'm not the teacher. I'd love to introduce you to the teacher, okay? Or refer to a teaching that answers that topic, right? Okay, go ahead.
I know, that's it. I'm just listening.
Beautiful. Thank you. Thank you, Michelle. Beautiful. Ashley.
I have a question. My kids and I kind of ran into a couple of situations this past week, and it's happened all throughout my life where not necessarily talking to someone or something, but I'll either hear them say it or they'll directly say it to me or my children, and they say, well, I'm a Christian. And I don't know how to respectfully respond to something like that.
Wait. So they're saying that they are Christian, or they're pointing to you and saying you're Christian?
No. Well, I'm a Christian. They do it kind of like that in the conversation, and it's like, for me, it's like it just stops the conversation. And it's like, 'cause I have nothing else I want to say, because I'm not. What's the respectful way of saying it? Because someone said it to Constantine before, and then we had an incident last week where someone said it to me and my husband and my children.
Look, I don't let people generally say blanket statements that need explanation without asking them, okay, what they mean. Someone says, well, I'm a this, I'm a that. Whatever they're going to tell me, I'm going to say, well, what does that have to do with this? What does that mean? What am I supposed to be getting from that, right? Well, I'm a Christian. Okay, so how is that relevant to what we're dealing with right now? Like, what am I supposed to, I don't understand what that means, okay?
I feel like they're trying to throw a fallacy and deter the entire conversation.
But you don't know. You didn't ask them why they said it. Okay, I'm just saying is if someone's going to throw something at me, well, I'm a this or that. They're going to give some sort of title or label to themselves to say that somehow makes a difference in the conversation. I want to ask them, in what way is that supposed to make, what do you want me to get from that? What do you mean? Okay, because I may not understand Christian the way you do. I may not understand whatever it is you're labeling yourself with, the way you do. We may understand things differently. I always ask for clarity.
Okay.
Is that fair? Does it make sense? Okay.
Yes. And with that, a lot of times they'll say I'm a Christian, as in like they don't like what me and my husband and my children are doing, and I may be in my own property, or I may be, out somewhere doing my own thing, not talking to that person. They come up, and a lot of times I haven't done it, but sometimes I get on the verge of, well, it's none of your business why you're here.
Yeah, well, I'm getting, you have to be thinking more about what point are they trying to make when they say it. Okay? It has nothing to do with how you feel about Christianity or how they feel about Christianity. What's the point they're trying to make? And the point they're trying to make may be needing a response of, I'm sorry, but this is none of your business, or this is my property, or these children are not your children, whatever it is, and the fact that you're Christian has nothing to do with this problem, okay? So you need more information, or you need to be just paying better attention to the information they're already giving you with their tone of voice and their body language and everything else that's been happening in the context of the conversation where they threw that out there. By the way, they go, well, I'm Christian. All right, well, okay. If I'm in the middle of that conversation, I probably can get a good handle somewhat on what they're trying to convey by saying that, because other parts of the conversation led up to that. Okay? And so they're throwing that at me because in their mind, it means something in terms of the statement. Not like Christianity means something, but they're saying, I'm a Christian, I'm supposed to receive that in some certain, it means something to them, okay? And so I would ask them, okay, or I play the game and go, and I'm a Messianic, what's your point? All right? Okay? Because I need to understand what they're trying to say. Okay?
It's funny you say that because I was just about to end it the way I was going to end it and saying, well, I never hear anyone say I'm Messianic or I'm Satanist or I'm Jewish. I never hear that like, well, it's just weird.
Again, it has to do with the context, okay? So without knowing the context, I was about to try to guess some things, but you know what? I have no idea what the person was saying it for, why they were saying it, okay? And it just doesn't matter. The thing is, you know, I was like, fine, good, I'm glad you're a Christian. What's that have to do with this, okay? I mean, I would respond in some way to understand what their point is, okay? What are they wanting? Because I'm only concerned with the communication. I don't care if they're Christian or not. I don't care if they're claiming to be something and they're really not walking it out. It doesn't matter to me at all. They're trying to tell me something that's in this little debate going back and forth, because apparently this was a little debate going back and forth. What are they trying to say? Because I want to respond to what, listen, this is for everybody. I want to respond to what they're trying to say, not necessarily what they're saying, all right? Which means I have to have some discernment as to what they're actually trying to convey information-wise. What's the point they're trying to make? Because what they're saying may be their way of saying something without saying something. And so I need to kind of look for that information. And if I can't find it, I'm going to ask, well, what do you mean? What does that have to do with this? I don't know what to do with that information, okay? And elders see me do that with people. They'll say something to me, and I'm like, okay, and what does that have to do with this? I'm not gonna just assume if I can't immediately guess and figure out what it is, I'll ask, you know? Go ahead.
Do they answer back?
Do they answer back? Yeah.
When you say, what's the point of this? Or
Yeah.
what's this have to do with it?
Yeah, they do, often with nothing. They don't know. They're just throwing stuff out and they don't know what it has to do with anything. Sometimes it's a defense mechanism. Sometimes it's a redirect. Sometimes they think saying that, whatever they're gonna say, is just enough to impress me. And I'm not saying people say I'm a Christian is what I'm talking about. When they say anything that doesn't seem to connect for me, I don't know what to do with it, I will say, okay, great. What does that have to do with this? Okay? Because they're throwing something into the mix that I don't necessarily know what they're trying to communicate, right? So I always ask for clarity.
Okay.
All right.
Perfect, thank you.
See, some of you get thrown because somebody puts in a religious context into it by saying, I'm a Christian, I'm a Jew, I'm a this, I'm a that. It doesn't have anything to do with anything, okay? Unless you're actually talking about religious comparisons in some way. But if it's some sort of problem with parenting and children and some other situation that's just happening in life, you should ask, okay, and that, how is that relevant? What is that? What am I supposed to do with that? And an elder will tell you, I've literally said those words many times, and what am I supposed to do with that? And what do you want me to do with that? And what do you want me to do with that? Okay? Now, even if I have a sense where it might be, but I'm really not sure, I'm still gonna say, okay, that's fine. How does that affect what we're talking about? Okay? If you don't understand, ask. And if you think you understand, but you're not real confident about it, still ask. Okay? Don't just jump to a conclusion. All right, Miss Linda.
The teachings and admonitions of the last few weeks have left an impression on me, and I keep mulling them over the following. You've been talking about community, and we had Shabbat, and we were in Acts 2. And in Acts 2, we see the miracle of hearing the word in the native language of the people that were listening, each in his own language. This was an awesome thing, and I think most of us here were probably trying to imagine what it would be like to be standing there with all these languages and knowing that people were really understanding this. They were gathered together in one place, one accord, to keep Shabbat and to remember the giving of the Torah at Mount Sinai and to celebrate the first harvest of the year. And this resulted in about 3,000 people repenting and receiving the set-apart spirit. Days later, the hearing of the word and believing it came to be about 5,000. That's pretty amazing. And I can just imagine the excitement going on there. And then we fast forward about 2,000 years and we find ourselves scattered among the nations. We're not in the same place, but we are working to be in one accord. And we were there to remember Shavuot and the giving of on Mount Sinai. And I was thinking about you, Rabbi, using AI to translate the teachings and everything eventually from m.t.o.i in many languages. And wouldn't it be awesome if the results of the hearing of the word in the native languages today would have similar results in greatly increasing the number of people repenting and beginning to keep Torah and joining us in this walk. Maybe the new sanctuary will be full sooner than we may have thought. And we can follow the example of those in Acts to really develop into a close community. In Acts 2:46 and 2:47, it says, "And day by day, continuing with one mind in the set-apart place and breaking of bread from house to house, they ate their food with gladness and simplicity of heart, praising Elohim and having favor with all people. And the Master added to the assembly those who were being saved day by day." And I just thought, we can be part of something awesome if we truly desire to do so. For if we truly desire, we usually will do. And we can develop into a loving community and maybe see a miracle similar to what they did.
Amen. I think that's absolutely the case. Look, how amazing would it have been, or would it be going forward, if in a zone 3 or a zone 2 or even a zone 1, I'm teaching and people are hearing it in their own language? Okay, that would be a tremendously effective way to get a message across, right? That's the reason for the miracle, is for more effective communication. Amen? And so imagine the Filipinos are hearing it in Tagalog, or there are actually some other dialects that it could be in, like Cebuano or something. Imagine those that are hearing it in Portuguese. We had Portugal in there. Sergio was there today. They could have heard it in Portuguese. We had those that could have been hearing it in Afrikaans. We had those that could be hearing it in a myriad of languages. Okay, so that communication. When we see how many are being added daily, when you think about those coming out of the world and out of Christianity and everything into Torah Observant covenant, whether they're coming here or whatever stepping stones there eventually would lead to something like this, there's probably thousands daily being added. Okay, not just in one place. There are thousands making choices to covenant by believing in Messiah and making attempts at keeping the commandments. And so certainly we see that happening as new people are moving here all the time. And new people are contacting us all the time. But if you think about the general reach that we have is primarily those who speak English fairly well. We are not reaching very many people that do not speak English fairly well, and we certainly are not reaching the ones that don't speak English at all. And how many people are there in the world that don't speak English really at all or don't speak it well? Probably more than speak it well, okay? And so imagine the people out there that have been waiting to hear something like this, but they just didn't have the language for it. And that's where we're now leveraging technology to be able to take my words, put them into their language. We have people who know the language enough to make sure that it actually says correctly what I said, so we can edit and make sure and tweak it. And even more powerfully, it's my face, the video that I did the teaching with my voice. It's incredible, all right? It's incredible. And so I don't have to worry about what weird voiceover language, weird sounding voice they might use. It's me. And so it's just, to me, it's so much fun to look at, but it's almost mind-blowing each time because I'm sitting there going, oh my gosh, I sound like I really speak the language. I mean, the accent's pretty good, the pronunciation's pretty, it really is, spot on. And so it's amazing. So thank you, Linda, for that.
I just thought this language thing, the barrier could come down and this could really speed things up. It's exciting.
If you think about the religiously focused parts of the world, there's much more of them that are non-primary English people than there are English speaking, okay? The more westernized modern world has become more New Age or just atheist or secular humanism or something, right? But where you have going into these other nations that are not the wealthy West, you find a lot more people at least trying to figure out a vertical something, okay? You go into the Spanish-speaking countries. You go into places like the Philippines who speak their language there. There's a very much more serious, interest in God, we'll call it, than you can find often in the big cities, okay? I had no idea living in New York City that there was televangelism because it wasn't on our TV, except maybe on a Sunday for a few minutes or whatever. But then you come into the South and it's everywhere. okay? And there's a church on every other corner, sometimes on 3 corners of the same block, all right? But not in New York City, not in the big city where I grew up. There wasn't churches everywhere, okay? And so you don't see that need that people have a hole for, that they need and recognize the need for that vertical, right? But you go to a lot of other countries, it's much more the majority have some sort of vertical interest, okay? And so, yeah, we could be really just growing in leaps and bounds in terms of the people we're able to help in Spanish, in another language, okay? Spanish being one of the most popular languages in the world, okay? Janet was like, okay. All right? So, you know, of course, she already has a multi-language house between French and Spanish, so, you know. Although I noticed that your children are mostly speaking more French and your husband does most of the Spanish, I mean, most of the language stuff. You speak mostly English to them. He's always speaking to them in French. So I hear a lot of French. I don't hear a lot of Spanish from them, so I don't know where that's all about, okay? But anyway, all right, because when Mateo comes up to me, he's always speaking French. Okay, so just understand, you know, it's also as more modern, you know, people in bigger cities and more modern countries, we tend to not as much continue the languages. We switch to like English, and then generationally less and less is the other language passed down, okay? So first, you find the next generation after the ones that were all speaking it fluently, you start to get to a generation that they understand it when you're telling it to them, but they can't speak it back. I grew up with a kid on the block who was Italian, and his mother would yell something to him. He understood exactly what she said. He couldn't speak it, though. But he understood her. Guess what? His children probably were going to get less, and then nobody's even speaking Italian. Only English, right? Okay? And so this is something that, again, we go to other countries where most of them do speak a little bit of English, especially if they're in the bigger cities, because to function in this world, English is sort of like the main language. But yet, there are a lot of people that they don't understand very well in English, all right? My father-in-law is Romanian. He speaks Romanian very well, that's his language. He understands English mostly, but if my wife is talking to him and he's not understanding something, if she's trying to tell him something in English, if she switches to Romanian, he gets it, because that's his language. So any of the nuances, any of the subtleties, any of some of the complex parts of a language are going to be tougher on someone if that's not their language. And so that's why I want to make sure some of the things I teach, which can be very different than what people are used to, we need to put in their language so they really get it. All right? All right, Janet.
I was talking to my kids in Spanish up until they decided to make the switch into English, which is crazy. But one time I was in Lima with my son, Mateo. We were in a taxi cab. And he turns to me and he says, "Mom, here they speak Spanish." He said that to me in Spanish. And then he said, "You and I will speak in English." I'm like, and then he hasn't been speaking to me in Spanish anymore after that. And he was like 10 when that happened.
Right.
He's almost 17 now. So I think at some point they will make that switch, you know.
All right, let me appeal to all of you multi-language people, all right? Teach your children your language. As a matter of fact, they'll learn English out in public. They'll learn English in school. They'll learn English plenty. At home, speak your language. Don't let them lose that, okay? Force the issue. Make them speak the language. You know, because I notice, for example, when I hear Olivier talk to them, he'll talk to them in French. Especially Mateo, he'll talk in French, okay? He won't talk to him in English a lot of the time. He'll say it in French. All right. This will keep them understanding and perpetuating keeping that going, the understanding of the language, you know? I'm not picking on my wife, but we talked about it when the children were born. I really wanted her to teach them Romanian. That ball got dropped a little bit, okay? I'm not mad at her for that. It's not easy to keep things going when you live in an English world and you have to keep another language going. But immersively, if you would just speak that at home, they would have 2 languages, okay?
Amen.
Yeah.
And all my kids were native English speakers. In fact, Spanish speaking. In fact, my youngest one, she's upstairs helping with the kids. But she was only speaking Spanish up until she was 5 or 6 when we put her in public school. That's all she was speaking to us. And but some people will get sensitive or offended if I'm speaking to my kids in Spanish in public, because they will think, oh, she's talking about us or whatever.
Right.
And I should just ignore that because it doesn't matter.
Don't worry about what other people say.
Exactly.
Don't worry about what other people
I'm
say.
going to go back and do that.
But even in public, though, it'd be okay if you spoke English. Just give them a place where they're immersed in the Spanish, right? And in your case, they can get 3 because Olivier speaks the French. And so they can hear and learn all of that. You know, but it's, you know, I think sometimes we don't realize how not, I don't even know what the word is. We're not as sophisticated as all these people in the rest of the world that all very well speak 2 languages. A lot of you only speak 1 barely. I mean, we barely struggle with English. But when you listen to the zone 2 and the zone 3, most of the people that are talking, English is not their primary language. Yet they sound very good and they are articulate and they understand how to communicate very well. But that's not their language. You know, we heard Sergio today, Portuguese is his language. You hear most of the South Africans, Afrikaans is their language. It's not English, but they speak it well. You listen to people in the Philippines where, you know, either Cebuano or Tagalog is their language. But they speak English reasonably well, right? And people in all of these other countries, they all speak more than 1 language. And we take a few little, you know, semesters of another language just because they felt it was culturally important that we do something in like our middle school, high school years to learn French or Spanish or something like that. These other places, they're all forced to learn English and their language. You know, it's so funny. People used to pick on our First Lady. Our First Lady speaks like 5, 6, 7 languages fluently. And they pick on her like, because she was a model or whatever. Oh, so she's like some dumb woman. How many of you speak 5 languages? Okay, or however many she speaks. There's at least 5. I forget how many it was. Okay, 7? I thought it was more than 5, so someone said 7. I mean, most of us, if we speak 2, that's about it, if we're able to speak 2. Okay, and probably we struggle with 1 of the 2. But I want to encourage us, if you have that ability to pass this on, pass it on. Let them have the ability. Plus, it challenges their mind to be able to think in different languages, okay? And so, you know, keep it going. Keep it going. All right, Janet.
I think that there is a theme, right, that I've been trying to work on myself. Okay, so back in one of the Rosh Chodesh, I think that was, I don't know when it was, that was back in January. There were some things that you said about like how, you know, each color has positive and negative traits, right? So I was looking down the list of the negative for reds, and for sure there's some things there that I need to work on. And same with the blue, because I do as my second color, so I have a lot of blue.
Okay, hold on.
Yes.
For those who are wondering, like maybe where she's getting this, I mean, in the book that Dr. Taylor Hartman wrote, he has lists of the negative and positive traits that, at least the way he believes they are, for the colors, because he came up with the metaphor of the colors for personalities. But anyway, so, because some of you are like, well, where do you find the list? Well, it's in the book. Okay, go ahead.
Yes, it is in the book. So in the balance theme, I was thinking, you know, I have friends and married to my husband who has a lot of white, much more than what I hope I have more now than when I took the test. I'll have to retake it, but I feel like that's what I'm missing. You know, missing more of the, I don't even know how to describe the white personality, but I need to be a little bit more subtle, a little bit more, not so going, but trying to pace myself out, to seek peace, to do. He has a different approach than me, and very different than me. And I feel like part of the character development that I'm finding in myself is to really look at what am I missing. You know, like not just who I am. You know, yes, I know who I am, but how can I make myself more like him? You know, and there's things in my personality that don't come naturally.
Right.
But I know I'm going to need to work on it.
Right.
And I so much appreciate what you said to one person this morning about we always tend to go the easy way. My husband, before we got married, when we met, he was a heavy smoker, and he decided to smoke, and he hasn't smoked in 25 years, and I'm very proud of him, but he did it. But it took a lot of, like Linda said, desire, but a lot of work,
Yep.
And so I do have a list of things that I know I need to work on, but I'm not doing it. So my question really is, are we inherently lazy people, like human beings? Are we lazy and we just try to get the easy way? Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely. Look, and I'm not saying to insult anybody. We have some sort of a level of default laziness in us, which we have to work on fixing that problem, okay? We like to take the easy way. We like to take the path of least resistance. We like to avoid anything that's going to seem arduous or hard or a lot of work. That's just our natural tendency. Now, most of us have found ways to overcome that, so we get things done, and we do the hard things that we would normally not want to necessarily do. Okay, although we still probably have things that we've been avoiding that we are avoiding because we really don't want to do them. And it all comes down to, like when you said you could look at the list of things that you want to fix, but there are things that you're just not working on. And the reason you're not working on them comes down to your desire. Do you really want to fix them? Okay? So it's the leverage. I taught that to you in the Level Up class, right? It's the leverage. Okay? Everybody has stuff that they know in their lives that needs to be fixed that they're not fixing. Why is it? Because you don't want it bad enough. Okay? If you wanted it bad enough, you would do it. It's as simple as that. Well, but I really do want to fix this. Well, intellectually maybe, but you don't have enough emotion and strength behind your really wanting to fix it. You like the idea of fixing it, okay? But do you really want to fix it? That's where the emotion has to come behind, right? I pick on emotion a lot, but emotion is the fuel that drives things, but you got to intellectually pick the thing first and then have the emotion support it. Don't let the emotion drive and pick the thing you're going to do, okay? Because the emotion is going to be like, I don't want to do that. But no, intellectually go, I want to get this thing fixed. Good. Now get some emotion behind it. Strengthen up that desire. You want to become Yeshua-like. That's kind of the point, isn't it? Because I know people always start sitting there going, why is he talking about all this stuff? It's Shabbat. Because we struggle to do the one thing that the book actually wants us to do, which is become Yeshua-like. But how are you going to do that if you don't first understand yourself and understand him and compare the two and see where the differences are? See, Janet has a list because she's examining herself. How many of you spend the time examining yourself? So that you can see the traits that are out of balance, all right? You have to know yourself that well. Maybe this is an interesting example. You all know who Arnold Schwarzenegger is, okay? And you know him from movies, but do you know he was also the king of bodybuilding for a very long time, okay? Okay, he won year after year after year after year. One of the reasons he did, though, is because of the symmetry and balance that he brought to his bodybuilding. And he would actually say in interviews that if he made a certain part of his body just this much, whatever, a quarter of an inch bigger, he knew he had to make everything else a certain much bigger so that it maintained balance. Where a lot of the other guys he competed against were known for their big arms or their big legs or their back or something but that was the one feature that stood out, where he had this symmetry and balance. Okay, I was a personal trainer for a little while. When people come to me, I would help them rebalance their body in terms of the figure that it looked like, okay? So that it didn't, so your eyes would not be drawn to any one thing because that one thing's out of balance, okay? If you have symmetry, then you get to see the whole, because the whole is now nicely balanced. Well, the same thing with your personality and your life and the way you behave. What parts of that are not in balance, okay? When he gave you the 7 areas to work on during the Omer Challenge, some of those areas are probably working okay, other areas are working pretty poorly because you're not balanced in how you're focusing on those 7 areas. So you might be focusing a lot more energy on one than another one, which is why that area is doing better than the one that's not doing so well. So you don't have a balance. We had a good question by a young man in the Zone 2 meeting this morning, was asking about time management, exactly this kind of question about balancing things in his life. Okay, Marcel asked a great question. And so you need to identify what's out of balance. Some of you work too much. You may think that's a little weird for me to say. Some of you don't work enough. Some of you spend a lot more time having fun. Some of you don't spend enough time having fun. These are things that are necessary in your life. Some of you spend a lot of time in your relationships. Some of you spend no time in your relationships. Okay? You have to find the right balance of these things. Not that they all have to have exactly the same thing, but what brings that harmony in those 7 areas? How much attention does each one need to make you a healthy, balanced you? All right? Now, some of it may need more attention for a period of time because it's so far out of whack to get it at least back into alignment. But once it's in alignment, it's not the big struggle. All right? Some of you need to eat differently. I didn't say go on a diet, eat differently. You know what? Making that adjustment's not easy until you've actually done it for a while and it's your new way of doing it. Some of you need to move your bodies more. Getting started is a little tough, but once you get going and doing it, it becomes part of a routine, right? A routine. Some of you are not spending enough time in your vertical with your spiritual side. Some of you are not spending enough time with dealing with your psycho-emotional issues and your personal development in those areas. Some of you aren't spending any time with the community, all right? So what do you need to do to bring those into balance? It doesn't mean they all get equal amounts of time. But you got to look at and assess, is there anything in my life that's getting too much time while something else isn't getting enough? Too much attention, not enough attention, to bring you into a balance. You know, the goal in Ephesians 4, okay, let me just read this so in case you've heard this with the fivefold all the time, but the goal in Ephesians 4 is that these people are to help us in the perfecting of the set-apart ones so that we can all come into a perfect man and to the fullness of the measure of the stature and the completeness of Messiah. In other words, his balance and how he treated people, how he treated the Father, how he did the work of his life. Okay? He says, my Father works, so do I. So work is part of it. But some of you are working hard and not working smart. So you need to work. But there are some that are so focused on work that they use it as an excuse not to have their relationships get any attention. Okay? And some of you are doing all these things and then you're not getting the attention you need. So you're starting to fall apart. Because I have people say to me, I'm trying to work as hard as I can, but now my health and everything else is not, because you're out of balance. Find a way to stay in balance. Is it easy? No. Okay? Doing the balancing act is tough. It's like being on the high wire and you're just trying to, it's not easy. Because there's so many things pulling you in those different areas of your life, right? But before you can become Yeshua, you got to become a healthy you. So this is part of what the scripture's wanting us to do. So some people are like, why are you talking about this stuff on Shabbat? Because this is your problem. Too many ministries are not focused on, most ministries are not focused on the problem. The problem is you don't understand you, so you don't know how to fix you to become him. Because that's the whole point here, is that we're becoming him. Yes or no? Okay? And so let's do more to understand ourselves, to start drawing our list, writing out our list of the things that we need to work on that are not in balance, come up with a game plan to start bringing them into balance, and work on it, right? You have to have a plan and you have to work the plan, okay? You got to do the plan. All right, Janet?
Thank you, Rabbi. Always you give us much more. And, when you were saying, if you don't feel like working out or eating whatever, that eventually it was going to become easier, right? So I heard a while back that whenever you interrupt the pattern, of what you usually end up doing, like I do that a lot, which is one area I need to work on, that you literally are, changing your brain so that now that pattern starts to, you get it interrupted, so it loses less power. So now you're going in a different direction. Mm-hmm. The more you do it, like you were saying, the easier it's gonna get. But not only that, it's gonna be easier because your brain is gonna go in that direction now, which is really awesome. How Abba created our brains to do all the things that we should do and we don't do, but we can. You know what I mean? So I love that.
So just to kind of quantify this, the first, I'm going to randomly pick a number. it kind of makes sense to me. The first 30 days of change are hard. But if you can do it for 30 days, whatever it is, it will become part of who you are now and be a lot easier to go. I had a point, going back a little ways, where I was going to the gym 3 times a week at least, doing some racquetball, doing some other things. And then the feast came up, unleavened bread, and I got distracted with other things, and I got out of my routine. And you know what's been hard? Getting back into the gym. And all I got to do is just go. But then I have to get my stuff, and then I got to go. Right? We turn into little whiny babies. Okay? Not out loud, but that's what's going on in your head. My wife's like, you want to go to the gym? I'm like, But I know if I were to start going again, I would start going again.
Right.
You know, because then I would get the routine going, and I always enjoy that I go, but I have to go. So you have to kind of crack the whip on yourself initially for the first month or whatever it is that you're doing something to get yourself to do the things you really are not motivated to do until it becomes part of your routine. Then you look forward to it. Okay? But that first start, you know, it's kind of funny. I used to sell gym memberships. I was a manager of a Bally's gym. It was Jack LaLanne back at the time. Okay, anybody remember Jack LaLanne? Then Bally's bought it out. And I would pitch people on joining the gym, after they took a free pass to try it for the night. And sometimes an excuse would come to me, no, I don't need to join. I've got equipment at home. I said, yeah, you hang your clothes on it and your towels. And they look at me like, how did you know? Because that's what most people do. They've got a bench and they got a thing and they drape clothing on it. They never use it. And so, not everybody, but a lot of people. Or they've got some sort of a bike that they ride or whatever. Again, they're hanging clothes over it and stuff over it. They don't use it. I said, that's why you're here. And you came as a guest, because you know you're not going to do the stuff at home. It's harder to do stuff on your own, by yourself, than in a place where the energy of other people doing the same thing you're doing is there. That's why it's a lot easier to do this here with everybody than at home.
Amen.
Because we're all with a different vibrational energy of all doing this together. Which is why I like to go to a gym rather than do this stuff at home by myself. It's harder for me to do that. Okay? And I'm also not a big fan of like Planet Fitness and those guys that, they don't like when people are really grunting and doing their job and dropping weights and everything. I want to be in a place like that. Okay, I'm not embarrassed that I can't do what they're doing. I want the energy of the people pushing it hard and into it and doing it. Not who are just sitting there playing around and just, dancing around, whatever they're doing. And I've been to both, okay? I want the person that's in there putting it all on the floor, okay? And I want to hear a little bit of grunting as they're trying to push that weight for that last rep. That last, the first reps, and then the last one is like, and then when they're done, if they're standing up, they just drop it, it goes boom, and it bounces. I like that. Because that's an energy that I can feed off of. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yes.
It's like when you guys come here, I went to a church years ago where you couldn't clap, you couldn't raise your hands, you couldn't do, there was no energy in the place. We just all sat there, listened to a teaching for a few minutes, sang a bunch of boring 1800s and 1500s hymns, written by people that write classical music. I don't know. There's no way to feel what we feel like when we listen to what Brianna writes. And it's for our world now, with the energy now and the type of music now that kind of can appeal to get us into that vertical thought and vertical place, right? So there's an energy to it, all right? And so that's why it's good to find people that are working on the same things you're working on. You want to change your diet? You have a particular diet you'd like to go to as a new way of eating? Find other people that are doing the same thing. Work together. Encourage each other to stick to the plan. I was raw vegan. I had some diet issues, health issues, so I went raw as part of trying to fix a problem. And I did that from unleavened bread to Sukkot. This goes back a long time ago. And then at Sukkot, I found it very hard to stay on the diet. So I ate whatever because we used to go to a place and make all of our meals together, all meals, like for the whole week, right? Got completely off the diet. Guess what happened? I never went back. And I had no problem with it once I got on it and was going with it. You know, it was not easy initially to kind of make the big changes, but I had good motivation. I was really not doing well, okay? I needed to make some changes, and my digestive tract was just having problems, right? And it helped, you know, the changes I made, you know, seemed to help quite a bit, at least for a little bit. Now, but you see, all I had to do was get off of it for 1 week, and it was done. We're all like that. That's where that lazy, oh, it's gonna be too much effort to start all over again, you know? And so, you know, it just could be so easy. So we gotta be careful and understand that that's where our underlying default is. We wanna just take the path that's easiest, okay?
That's great, Rabbi, and appreciate your modeling for us. Modeling, it's maybe not the right term, but you know, you're a good role model. Like I think about the people I want to be more like my husband. You obviously, my father, 85, he's still going into conferences. Everybody knows him where he is because he worked for so many years. He's still very active in his field. He's very alert. I mean, so I wanna grow it. My flaws in my character. That's really what I'm working on. Esteeming others above yourselves is something that I wanted to ask you a question about that. So that would definitely include not judging other people. It's hard for me sometimes. This is my struggle. Okay, when I see people attacking the ministry,
right?
And it's hard for me because I know where I am. I know what I have received and been fed for all these years. And I've seen the blessings, and I've seen our growth individually, but also in our family, in our marriage. And it's hard for me to see that. You know, so I know I'm supposed to just let it be, because obviously I can't do anything about it. I can't change what people think, how they're going to attack or not. But how do you put that, how do you honor this thing that we're supposed to do, which is esteem others above yourself?
Okay, let's kind of figure that out. Okay, so it's not just like we're esteeming everybody above ourselves, all right? What it's saying is when you're in a situation, okay, and so for all of you sort of Myers-Briggs there, okay? So when you're in a situation where your tendency might be to go into FE and you're caring about how other people feel and you tend to maybe put them above you, all right? And so your preference is to please or to help the harmony of the group, or in other words, esteeming others above yourself, and you're willing to subjugate yourself and what you want to the group or to somebody else, okay? What the scripture wants you to do is, if it's not going to hurt you, then why not let them have? Why not esteem them? In other words, give them, put them above you, put them above what you want, okay? I do this every single day with my wife. I know some of the men hate when I say this, but if she walks into the living room where I have an up and down desk I stand at and do work in front of watching the news or whatever I'm watching, if she walks in, she always asks, which is funny, but she says, do you think it would be okay if I watch something? I said, absolutely. I always hand her the remote. Why? Because it's not hurting me. I don't need to be, okay, doing whatever. And so I can esteem her, in other words, give preference to her to have something that she might want, right? Now, there are times where something's happening in the world that I just heard about, and I want to make sure I understand what's going on, and I say, look, let me finish watching this, and then you can have it, all right? But it's very rare, because it has to be literally something happening, and most of the time you watch the news, nothing's happening. They're just rehashing the same nonsense over and over again. But every now and then something happens, and I may need to, because I'm only watching to make sure I know what's happening. So I don't just watch show after show and be bored out of my mind. But I'll turn on and just say, if something's happening, it'll be right there in front. That's what they'll be talking about. And so, but, you know, if you're going out, letting the other person have the preference, letting the other person, unless it's going to be something that's a problem for you, okay? Like you have an actual dietary issue where you can't eat certain things, then obviously there may be a reason to say, well, I can't go to that place because it doesn't offer anything for my particular diet, right? Because I can't eat the food there. But generally speaking, are you preferring to place somebody else ahead of you? That's what it means. Does that help, Janet? Okay? But not everybody, because not everybody is in a relationship with you. Not everybody is on that page with you. These are for people that the way it's describing in the scripture, that you have that relationship with, all right? And so that would be the idea of esteeming others over yourself, okay? If you push it for things always to be your way and your preference, then you're not doing that, all right? You should be only doing that when it's actually necessary, right? It's part of, because you don't want to lose you in the mix. Then your FI will get all angry at you, you Myers-Briggsers, okay? Your FI, some of you really struggle because your FI is very mad at you on a regular basis because you're not taking care of yourself, okay? Your introverted feelings. You're not caring enough about what you think or feel about things because you're only putting everybody else first. And so then that blows up eventually because inside, eventually, it's like, you need to take care of me. So I'm going to make you miserable until you do. And that's what will happen often. But also, if you only take care of you, you're going to be miserable because you have to have that outside interaction as well and care about how other people feel. You have to find a balance between these things. So Scripture's saying, look, where you can, give the other person the preference. Let them have their way. Let them have what they want. Put them first, okay? Elevate them over you, as long as it's not hurting you. And not getting what you want isn't hurting you. Not getting what you need is hurting you. And sometimes your internal self needs a certain amount of attention or getting whatever it is. So at those points say, I need to have what I need to have. But that really shouldn't come up all that much unless you've completely swung it the other way. You just haven't given yourself any attention and you've just ignored your own feelings and your own needs for so long, then it's going to blow up in your face. Yes, I'm talking to you. And you, and you, and you, and you, okay? I get all these people looking at me like, all right? So this is where the problem is, but context. Yeshua is talking, the apostles are talking about those who are brethren in the body, acting like brethren in the body. Because remember, we have a lot of people that show up that are among us, but they're not of us. And we don't know who they are. I'm not trying to get you to figure out who's who. But based on your interaction with people, at least you know how they are in terms of you, okay? So when you're close with anybody, me and my wife, right? I almost always put her first. In other words, if anything comes up, whatever you want to do, okay? And so, now of course, if she gives it back to me, I say, thank you. I'm okay if she gives it back. She says, no, you watch what you want, and that's fine. But I always am happy to put her first, okay? Unless there's something I think is important, okay? Like I just found out there was a bombing somewhere or some terrible thing just happened and I need to know what happened, okay? Which doesn't take forever. I don't need to hear 47 reports of it. Just one probably will be enough. So I know what happened. Look, I even turn the news on Shabbat for 5 minutes because if something is happening, like another 911 or something, right, 9/11, it'll be on all the news channels, okay? Because I was on the phone with somebody during 9/11. I had no idea the first building had gotten hit. I wasn't watching anything. I called up a friend, and the friend yelled at me on the phone as soon as she answered the phone and said, yes, I'm watching it. I said, watching what? Because I guess everybody was calling to say they were watching this thing. So then I realized, you know what? I probably need to watch a little bit to make sure if something terrible is happening somewhere so that I'm aware of it. But that shouldn't take more than 2 or 3 minutes if nothing's happening. Because if it's happening, it's everywhere. That's all they're going to be talking about, right? So if they're talking about anything other than some major thing, then no major thing is probably happening, okay? So I can find that out by putting the news on for like 2 minutes, okay? Anyway, Janet?
But, okay, so with the people that attack, okay, the ministry, so the best will be just to pray for them, Father. They don't know what they're doing.
Yeah.
And that's it.
Yeah,
that's all you have.
You don't have any other responsibility than 2 things. For people that are doing any kind of negative things, 1, you should pray the Father, help them to see the struggle they're having so that they can fix it. The second thing is, don't get toxified by their toxicity. Don't get so close that you kind of bring some of that toxicity into you. So you don't need to be spending that much time with people that are toxic to you. It doesn't mean just if they're attacking the ministry. You might have toxic people in your life that have nothing to do with the ministry, but they're just toxic. So you might need to start limiting your interaction with people that are just toxic. I mean, some of you have people in your life that all they do is negative, 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 complain, 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 criticize, and it has nothing to do with the ministry. They're just people you know your whole life that are those people are toxic. You need to just shut that off, shut it down, and say, look, if that's what you're going to talk about, I'm not interested. Okay, let's talk about something else. And if they're not able to do that, then cut them out. Okay, because you don't need to be in that level of toxicity. All right? So if you know people attacking the ministry, I would consider that toxic as well. You know, be very aware of that situation. Maybe say, look, if you want to keep talking to me, we were friends before, we could be friends after, but you can't sit here just knocking the ministry that I'm a part of. That's still my leadership. I get that you don't like them, fine. I don't need to hear that. We don't need to have that be a part of what we're dealing with.